That's provided ammunition to the Republicans, the Tea Party Republicans who took over House in 2010. Well, if you have too much debt, this is what's going to happen. Turns out about 6 months later, there was a graduate student in UMass Amherst, which is known as a communist school of economics. He wanted to work on something similar, but he's a graduate student. He doesn't have easy access to data. This is 2010. Access to data wasn't that easy those days. He says, let me write to Professor Rocco, the guy from Boston University. He says, Professor Rogoff, can I please have your data sets? He said, sure, why not? And Ken Rogoff tells his RA, research assistant, please email our data to this graduate student. It's an Excel sheet. It's about 190 countries over 60 plus years. He gets the data and he says, let me first make sure that I can replicate the results. He does that and he cannot find any of the results. In fact, it is completely opposite. And I probably did something myself. He goes through all of his calculations. There is a raw data, but a lot of the variables they use are calculated in Excel. Turns out the research assistant for these two people, one is an economist at Harvard, he made a mistake with the order of operations. He forgot the necessary parentheses. And as soon as you corrected that, none of them. They actually had to withdraw the paper. It was already published. Obviously, big embarrassment. So these things have real consequences. Let's go back to the original version of this. If I had a number like that, I would know immediately something wrong. But it's not always the case that you do. There was another story. I played the savior on this case. I came to the UK in 2003 to do my PhD in finance. And the only reason I even came to UK, there were only two things I knew about Kentucky, horses and basketball, and that was it. My brother-in-law was a finance professor there. He insisted that I apply for the PhD program there so that I could be his RA. He knew that I was a surgeon with all sorts of computational stuff and statistics. I came. In fact, he asked me to come in May. I had to take a summer class so that I could be paid by the university. And during the summer, they had him and his co-author, who was the head of research at Boston Federal Reserve those days. Later on, he became the president of Boston Fed. His retirement. They had already submitted a paper to top econ journal. This was about some of the issues in Japanese economy in 1990s. And the reviewer comments were very friendly. They absolutely loved the paper. They suggested a few changes here and there. That typically happens in top journals. He said, just come over, because the person who did their work at Boston Fed was no longer there. This shouldn't take you more than a week to do it. Sure. And the data was in what we call flat files. But they're basically kind of comma separated kind of stuff. You could read them into Excel and export anywhere you want. But I had a different stats program that could read the flat files directly. I didn't bother with it. And I've been using that program since 1980. It's 2003. I read all the data. We had data on loans from every single Japanese bank to every single Japanese listed companies over 20 years. In fact, files were divided into annual files. So you read them in sequence. Total number of observations was close to 500,000. Those days, Excel could only read, would only have 65,536 rows, not 1,048,000. But the software that I used had no such restriction. I read them all. I replicated every single thing they had done in the original paper. Nothing was too complicated. And I look at the results, I get none of the results. In fact, kinds of certain estimates are exactly the reverse of what they found they claim. It's not like they found 1.1, I found 1.2. Sometimes, you round things up, stuff like that can happen. They found, let's say, 1.2, I found negative 3.2. And I look at it every single place, I can't find anything wrong with my coding. I took it to Joe and said, Joe, something wrong here. He says, it's been a while. At that point, I was working in the industry for about 6 years. So I had not done some statistical work for a while. I said, Joe, this is not complicated stats. I could do that in my sleep and I'm 75, even if I had not done it for 70. The RA read the files in Excel, and some of the later years, number of observations were more than 65,536. It just truncated and didn't even warn you. It omitted thousands and thousands of data points, and those data points were not random. They belonged to the industries that were really in trouble in Japan. It's what's going on. In fact, I had the file in Excel, typed the truncated data into my code and the other stuff. I got exactly the same results. Well, he was convinced. Then he kind of saved the paper, but I had to change the method, and the method involved something there was no ready code for. I had to write 2,000 lines of code. Turned out the results were even better when you did it better. But here's what would have happened. I could have been conscious. All right. Here's the data. I read it. I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to read it in Excel. The only reason I didn't do it, I didn't like doing stats in Excel. It's not complicated enough to do useful stuff. And AER, this is American Economic Review, had a policy. You had to provide all of your data and all the code you use to get your results so that somebody could replicate it. It's not like they don't accept it. Some graduate student would have done that, because after that paper was eventually done, I actually spent more time on providing a replication guide than actual coding. Somebody would have found that out. Nothing would have happened. Endowed chair at UK, but here's what would have happened to the Eric. He would have been fired from, he could have been fired from Boston Fed. If nothing, there is no way he would have been the Boston Fed president with that kind of embezzlement. Details matter. Stop here for today. On Thursday, we're going to introduce annuities. We're going to figure out how to calculate present and future value of them and different retirement planning problems. That's going to be the last of our Excel kind of stuff. Next Tuesday, we're going to start with chapter 2. Right? You will have no assignments on these parts. The first assignment will be based on chapter 2. Yes. Sure. In your back.
Do you know why the floors are wet?
Just a second. Oh, here it is. The first argument is the interest rates. The second is sequence of cash flows you're gonna be discounted.
No, you know why the floors are wet?
What?
Do you know why the floors are wet?
Apparently there was condensation because of the AC issues.
Yeah. So cold.
I know.
What's the okay?
Apparently at 7:30, it was pretty much a place where you could ski.
So it's the interest rate divided by frequency.
Yeah, APR divided by frequency. That's the period interest rates. I'm gonna give you guys this file anyway.